Aloha, mahalapono. I'm going to play a song for you guys. It's called The Feeling. It has many meanings. You'll see.
Fade from the window pane as I look out to the west. I see the sunset in these evening skies, and I see more than they televise. And I know this ain't a joke, so somehow they realize the show. But still we think we are free. Pardon me. We're still too blind to see. Pardon me. Now it's all past all the simple things, and I wondered where the hell I've been inside. I fear I've been waiting for truth. And I know there's more to life that brings the joyous times and the joyous things that I fear I'm missing somehow. When I wake, I see glaciers falling from mountainsides. Yes, I see the melting away of liberty's years. But so violent and glowing, flowing. Now the tides are rising, smoke-filled skies, auburn nights. I never thought I'd understand all the cracks in this cement. But as I drive over these city streets, I feel the presence of the dead. And unbeknownst to me, I see there's more to life than to my eyes meet. Oh, the truth is hidden always, but in the end, everything breaks down. Yeah. Guilty will be found when all the decadence exposed. When it's time, heads will roll for all the reasons that we've got to revolt. For all the reasons that we've got to revolt. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I found a cure for the world's problems, like somehow we'll save the day tomorrow. But there's no way to know anything for sure. All you see ain't all there is. In the end, old time will tell once the time is spent. I see the colors splatter on the canvas red, and I see your face piercing through the veil between this world and infinity. I've never been much of an artist now, but I see the truth is pouring out, yeah, from the depths of these jokers' paintings. Now I see all my dreams unfold before me. Yes, I see an end to this whitewash story. Oh, the rabbit hole is calling for me. Society, man, it fucking bores me.
All right. Aloha. Tonight, we are going to go down a rabbit hole. And I have, through arduous sacrifice and ritualistic practicing of the finest arts, crafted 2 special cigarettes tonight. We are going to smoke these special cigarettes, the cigarette of knowledge and the cigarette of wisdom. And as we smoke them, we will see where the world takes us. Stick around. All right, aloha mahana pono. I've got a new setup, as you can tell. I finally figured out how to get this damnable Nikon camera of mine to be a webcam. So it is a Nikon D31, which is about 8 or 9 years old, and it is not designed to be a webcam. So I have had to do some jerry rigging and some hacking to make this happen. But here we are. I had to create an overlay because look at this. Otherwise, this would have driven me crazy. Look at this. Look at all this crap that we have to look at. Be glad I made this. We don't. I made a vow before I deleted that live earlier that I would have that figured out. So here we go. So as the video of the title of this video describes, it's a mouthful, but we're going to say it, and I'm going to say it a couple times because it may not mean what you think it does, and maybe it does. Who knows? The question is do you understand the realization of the causation of this idealization? Idealization. There we go. The realization of the causation of this idealization. What does that mean? So, when you're born, you enter this phase of life that's called the oceanic view. And in this phase of your life, there is no concept of you. There is no concept of who you are. There's no concept of doubt, worry, fear, anxiety, God, anything in between. You simply exist. And in this phase of life, you cannot distinguish between yourself and the world that's around you. Everything you take in, it's as though it's a part of you. You haven't been taught the words that have been labeled and described this thing that we call reality. And I'm going to put the brakes on it there for a second. I'm going to explain something to you. And I've said it in other videos. But this channel started out as a philosophy channel. I was just doing philosophy videos. And then when this pandemic started to occur and I found out about the coronavirus and all this good jazz, I put up a couple of videos showing raw footage that was coming out of Wuhan. And then I stumbled upon French Files. I'm sure she's in here now. And she had did a video, a live stream about the virus. And I was very impressed with it. And I asked to mirror it. And so I did. And she allowed me to mirror it. And I got a lot of like hate from it. And so I sent her email. I'm like, no, fuck this. I'm going back to doing philosophy videos. But as time progressed and as this thing started unfolding, this thing that's much bigger than this pandemic that we've now encountered as COVID-19, just what the government's doing and all what the world is doing and just the grand solar minimum, I felt compelled to do these videos, these type of live streams, because I just have a unique way of seeing things. As a philosopher, I can see it from an unbiased eye to the best of my extent, right? Nothing is completely unbiased. So back to this whole realization of self, the whole reason why I did that spill is because everything that I present to you, everything that I teach you, right? It's just my idea. It's my opinion. It's how I see life. It's my truth, right? What is truth? But your perception of reality, right? Your perception is truth. That's what your truth is perception. Your perception is truth. And your perception determines your reality. Therefore, your truth determines your reality. But what we forget is the your part, the singular part. Your truth is one of 7.8 billion. And as we grow old and as we grow up, right, we're taught many things that we suck in like sponges as kids. And one of these things is reality, right? So what is reality? What is your understanding of reality? What's your definition? What is it? You see, it doesn't matter what you define reality as. To you, that's what it is, right? But what is something that we can all agree on, something that we can all define as reality? Well, it's as simple as this. So long as it falls under one of five categories, we define it as reality. So long as we can see it, so long as we can hear it, so long as we can smell it, so long as we can touch it, and so long as we can taste it, it's reality. Because if it doesn't fall under those five categories, it's speculation, it's theory, it's probability. It's out of the realm of what we know because we can't observe it in any of those five categories. But you see, in this small little sphere that we call reality, we have crafted a lexicon of words and definitions to define things and to understand things, right? Because the whole concept of being a human is to superimpose ourselves onto the universe and to our environment around us in the hopes of trying to explain that which we do not understand because we fear what we do not understand. And that's no good. So we have to understand things. Things have to make sense. Things have to fit into the little pieces that we have created for it. Science, to the extent of what science is, works for humanity, but we created it. We came up with it. We're the ones that imposed the laws of nature. Nature has no laws. There's no laws of nature. Nobody told nature what to do. Nature is just doing what nature does, right? It doesn't need to follow a set of rules. As a matter of fact, I look at nature more in the terms of the Tao, right? So it's a Chinese philosophy, the Tao. And it is said that the Tao moves both to the left and to the right. It achieves great accomplishments, but it lays no claims to those accomplishments. That is the Tao. It is everywhere, it is everything. It has no reason, no rhyme. It simply is. And everything from our brains, we create this reality. And in that reality, because we can only see it from one myopic perspective, that reality must make sense because that is what the idea of idealization is simply us trying to make sense of our environment, trying to make sense of the senseless, trying to wade ourselves through this darkness that we call life. And what we tend to forget is that every other human being is doing the same thing. They're wading through the darkness, just as clueless as you. Yet that gets lost in translation when we manifest this ego, which is called the I, the idea of self. It becomes this problem where we have our own unique versions of what is reality. And if someone that enters your reality doesn't match what you believe or what you think or what you feel, our first instinct, which is taught to us by this dogma of a society, is to demagogue them, is to argue with them, is to prove to them that you're right and that they're wrong, right? So let me light this cigarette of knowledge back up. So that's where we have so many disconnects, right? So we all have the same understanding of what it means to be alive, right? But how we describe that understanding and how we experience that understanding is totally unique to us. And when I went through that whole spiel about, doing Fringe's, mirroring her channel and shit like that and started doing this, but Fringe inspired me to do that. But a few years ago, I took mushrooms, okay? And I took a shitload of mushrooms, golden caps, which are some of the most potent psilocybins you can take. I took 13 grams of them, and I didn't mean to take 13 grams. It was done by accident. I was very ill prepared, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And let me tell you that those 13 grams, the best way I can describe it is I got a dose of cosmic consciousness. This was a couple of years ago. And since then, I have completely changed how I see this world, how I view it, and how I interact with it. You see, I'm going to tell you guys a secret that they don't teach us in society. And the secret is this. First of all, you already know this secret because my philosophy is about human nature. My philosophy heavily is involved in understanding how human beings tick. What makes us think? What makes us do these little things that we do? And the truth is that as I've come across this knowledge and I've been able to formulate it into a philosophy, everybody knows it because I'm speaking from the same perspective as a human being as the person that's listening to this as a human being, because no matter what our uniquenesses are, we are bound to the same rules. It doesn't matter if we view those rules the same or we view those rules differently. The fact that we communicate on an audible, visual, and on a tangible sense, we function in the same manner. And so what happened with me is, first of all, mushrooms, they take a long time for you to come off of them, long after the high has gone away. You see, mushrooms actually alter the chemicals in your brain. It rewrites it, right? It's like going in your car and removing the governor from a car. And if you don't know what a governor is what stops your car from going full speed and continuing to accelerate. It'll stop maybe 10 to 15 miles off of what your reading will say on your dashboard. Now you take a governor off and it'll just keep accelerating to the point where it'll shake itself apart. So when you take mushrooms, and sometimes when you do LSD or any type of psychedelic, you remove some of the governors from your brain, and it allows you to go from seeing life like this to seeing life like this. You can't fully escape that periscope because you are your ego. That's why there's no such thing as true ego death, because you are your ego. To insinuate ego death is to insinuate your own death physically. You can't separate the two. However, ego death, in the sense that I've experienced, is I realized that my ego is but a small part of what I really am and who I really am, why I really am, where I really am. I'm everything at once, but it's my opinion. So the ego, you just make up your own truth. Just whatever you want to believe is up to you, right? I've long since gotten past the point of where when I want someone doesn't agree with me, so what? Doesn't mean we can't be friends. But how often, when you disagree with somebody, do they just not want to talk with you because you don't fit into the paradigm that their reality, that their perspective, what has shaped them as human beings, you don't fit into that paradigm, and therefore you are a bad person. That's why we have so much of this Trump derangement syndrome. And whether or not you're a pro-Trumper or an anti-Trumper, that exists, Trump derangement system, but it exists on both sides. It exists on the extremes of both sides, right? So we love to be divided. We love to give our opinions. We love to tell people what we think and how we feel. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly human, right? Anything that I speak of, I'm not speaking out as though it's bad. I'm speaking in the way that I'm just telling you how it is from the perspective of someone who practices and teaches and thinks and speaks in philosophy. And so once I took those mushrooms, it allowed me to see it from the eyes of what I would describe as a joker, right? So what does it mean when you're awakened, when you've woke up, right? Because anybody can become a Buddha, right? Buddha simply means the awakened one, and it comes from the Sanskrit root word bud, which means just to be awake, to be upright, to sit up, to not be asleep. So anyone can be Buddha. Buddha is not a god. Buddhism is not a religion, and that's a big misconception we have in Western cultures, is we think Buddhism is a religion. Buddhism is the same thing as yoga. It's just a practice. The whole idea of Buddhism is to free you from such notions that you need to be reliant on things such as religions. So waking up is interesting because you can never go back to sleep. You see, that's the thing that so many people won't tell you, is that when you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. You can't go back and plug into the matrix that you just realized was a matrix. And that's where a lot of people diverge in several different ways. You see, we might go the route of the hermit, right? Where you've woken up and you realize that none of it matters. And you just lock yourself away and you just stay to yourself for the rest of your life. Another way is going crazy because look, it's not everybody can put the information together when you realize just how infinitesimally small you are. When you realize that and you understand the full scope of that, you can lose your mind from it because our egos are so fragile. We can't comprehend something that massive and our place in it because it would shatter this fragile thing we call ego. And then you can become what's called a bodhisattva, and that's what I have become. And that is someone who has woken up and yet chooses to return to society to try to free others, like Morpheus was a bodhisattva, right? My whole concept is not to get anyone to think how I think, just to get you to think and to have you realize the causation of this idealization. That it's all made up. It's an illusion. All of life is an illusion. These ideals, these idols, these things that we have crafted and constructed and created, every thought, every feeling is an illusion. It doesn't really exist. It only exists in here. But you see, because we only have that to go on, we can only see it from one point of view on base settings. Now, see, if you do psychedelics and you do things that alter the way that your mind functions, you start to realize that you are one grain of sand in an infinite beach that stretches for all of eternity. And so I realized that in the grand scheme of things, I am meaningless. You're meaningless. Your opinion is meaningless. Your life is meaningless. It doesn't matter. The grand scope of the universe. Now, if I stop just there, that's nihilistic, right? And D.T. Suzuki, who was a very famous Japanese philosopher, said that there is a very fine line between nirvana and nihilism. It's as thin as a razor's edge. So let's stop just there and say that we're meaningless. Okay, we're nihilistic. Well, none of it matters, right? None of this shit matters. But how I see it is this, and I choose the middle way. Because every human being evokes their existence into existence. You are creating your own reality. You are manifesting your own existence. Everything else is outside of you. So we give meaning to the meaningless in our individual lives. We put our stamp on it. We give it our flavor, and we give it our best shot. And within our own scope of magnitude, it's meaningful. We give meaning to the meaningless, and in my humble opinion, we are simply the universe manifested in physical time to experience and enjoy itself. You're welcome to yours. But what causes this opening, what causes this awakening, is something that is so old on this planet, and I'm talking about mushrooms. We've been doing mushrooms for at least 10,000 years, and if you've ever subscribed to the mushroom theory, is that if you follow the lines of evolution that we eventually evolved from primates, one catalyst for that is the possibility that a roaming band of primates came across a field of magic mushrooms, and over the course of generations and generations and generations of taking mushrooms, it changed their brains into what would become the modern Homo sapien sapien. Now, I don't know if I believe that personally, but I wasn't there. So I can't tell you yes or no. So, all right. I am going to jump into the chat with you guys because I don't know how long I can actually stream with this camera. It's jerry rigged, like I said, and it may overheat. So if it shuts off at any point, I'm not going to restart. Just know that we'll catch another time. So let's go into the. Let's see. So Tim says that that's why Buddha was always sitting because he was fat. All right. So here's something about Buddhism that people don't may miss in their attention is that there are two forms of Buddhism. There are two main forms. There's several different sub forms, but there are two main forms of Buddhism. that is practiced in this world. And the first form is the oldest, and that is the Indian form of Buddhism. That is like your Tibet. The Dalai Lama is a part of this form. They're more by the books, and they represent Buddha as he really was, which was skinny. And when it migrated over to China, they adopted it into their custom, and they created a fatter version of this Buddha, which was already a legendary folklore character called Gautama. And so that Buddha is not the same Buddha in essence as the Siddhartha that is taught by the Indian form of Buddhism, but at the same time, they're the same person. Because being Buddha is not a singular person, it is a title. It means to be awake, and that implies that everyone else is asleep. So, is it running off the battery or is it plugged into the charger? So no, I don't have, this is just running on my battery right now. I've ordered the AC adapter where it's the battery that plugs in and you can continuous play it. But even with that being said, the camera itself, because it's not designed to continuously run, it's usually just designed to record 10 minutes at a time. So the camera itself could overheat. I'm not entirely sure. So who knows? We got Tim says Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So the movie was fucking hideous. The movie was horrible. But the book was great. The book was phenomenal. Matter of fact, I've read a couple of his books, and I'm thoroughly enjoyed them. But Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is really good. So you guys think that the camera looks good, everything like that? Let me see if I can get it into focus. Better focus. You know, these things are a work in progress, right? All right, that looks good, right? Yeah, that's good. All right, so that was my whole thing, is just to have people to understand that, you know, the realization, when you realize it, right? When you understand the concept that what you are is merely just that, is a concept. You know, all your fears and your doubts and your worries and your anxieties and your pains and your memories and your experiences, all of that comes from this tiny part in the back of your brain. In terms of your entire body, it doesn't even take up 1/100th of the space. But this thing that we call self, that I call me, Viticus Rising, right? It's generated from your brain. It isn't your brain. Your brain generates you to help it function. But yet you're still your brain. And at the same time, you're not your brain. You see, I've learned something in life, and that is all of life is a contradiction. Anything that anyone says can be contradicted. Because life, in and of itself, is a contradiction. It's just how I see it. But it's a beautiful contradiction. It's a necessary contradiction. And the contradiction isn't in terms of opposing forces. It's in terms of mutual inclusion, right? Because what is life but what the Japanese call gigimuge? And that is the interpenetration of all living things and events. Everything is reticulate. You see, in Newtonian mechanics, which helped shape Western cultures during the Enlightenment period, these Newtonian mechanics is based off of, and see, how many people know where atoms, where the science of atoms come from, right? What does atom mean? Because that's what it's all about. Newtonian mechanics is about atoms. You see, atoms comes from the concept of a very old Greek philosopher. And this Greek philosopher, he predates Socrates. I think it's, I always forget his name. But it's something like, it's related to Socrates. Anyway, he said, he came up with the concept of the atom, and the atom comes from the Greek word atomos, meaning non, and tomos meaning cuttable. So atomos means that which cannot be cut. So basically, when we came up with the creation of the atom was as far as we could cut. When we broke, say for example, the anatomy down of the human body, and okay, we see what's inside, and okay, it's made of all these little different things, and we broke those things down, and we got down to the cellular level, all the way down to the atom, and it was named the atom because that's as far as we could go. Now we have since gone further. They don't teach that in school today, but we've been able to cut further. But that just means non-cuttable. Means that we've cut to the point that we can't cut any further. The width of our blade is just too wide. We can't split it down the middle anymore. And that's what atom means. And the whole concept of Newtonian mechanics is based off of all these atoms floating around in space, bumping in each other, making events happen. And that's called a catenary way of thinking. And a catenary is just like a set of dominoes that gets bumped over, and they go kata, 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 kata. Newtonian mechanics is based off of cause and effect. Newtonian mechanics is based off of Christian theology. It's the idea that either somebody told nature what to do, or that it's just a giant, careless machine that has no remorse, no love for humanity. We're just a fluke. We shouldn't exist. But we're all these little atoms bouncing around. And that's just not the case. It's not the case at all. See, it's much smaller than that. It's already been debunked. We're not just a bunch of atoms bouncing around, right? We have atoms, but it's more than that. All you are is an immense amount of energy, which is vibration, which is particle waves and wavely particles, concentrated in a finite space, a physical space. So is this. This is immense energy concentrated in a finite object. The difference between the energy and my energy is that this is vibrating faster. And so because it's vibrating faster, I can't put my finger through it. But it's not moving so fast that it can go through me. So we're vibrating on a similar plane. Now, what I mean by that is imagine a ceiling fan. Now, when it's off, it has holes in it. You can put your hand through it. But the moment you turn that fan on, it starts spinning, starts creating this circular energy. And at a certain point, it becomes a solid object. Try throwing an egg through it. It won't go. It'll hit a solid object because it's creating an energy by just continuously going. And that's all of life. We're all just energy. We're particle waves and wavely particles. And this neurological phenomenon is being interpreted through the back of our brains, and we're projecting what we call reality. So, all right, let me see. Someone asked a question. Okay, is God real? Is God real? That's an interesting question. I would have told you yes up until a few years ago because I was a devout Christian. Do you want to know the truth? Here's the answer. I don't know. Nobody does. Nobody has that answer. The most devout Christian in the world doesn't have that answer. Not truthfully. You can't know something with having no knowledge of something. You can speculate and you can believe. You see, I always tell people how our words are spells and they're powerful, and how our words get lost in translation. That when we say an everyday ordinary word, we don't understand its origins. And so when you say that you believe in something, say you believe in God, well, what does the word believe mean? Well, it comes from the Anglo-Saxon word leaf, and leaf means to wish. So when you say you believe something, what you are actually saying is that you have a fervent wish, a hope that you're right. Christianity teaches us to cling to the rock, right? But if you're clinging to a rock in the middle of the ocean, you will drown. You see, faith is much different than belief. Faith is believing in what you cannot see. It's still belief, though. They're connected. They're separate. Like fate and destiny are separate, but they're connected. I always explain the difference between fate and destiny is fate is what is going to happen. The destiny is the road you take to that fate. So, in a very similar way, so goes the previous example. But, all right, so we don't know is the thing. We all believe what we want to believe. Like, we have had thousands of religions on this earth since this go around society has begun. And look, Hinduism is twice as old as Christianity. It's 500 years older than Judaism. Right? In Hindu society, they're right. In an Islamic culture, they're right. In a Christian culture, you're right. But who's really right? Well, you're all just guessing. So it's the only answer I can give you is I don't know. Who? None of us do. Whatever I think and whatever I feel and whatever I believe is just simply that. It's just what I think and what I feel and what I believe. And I don't oppose that upon anybody else because I'm the only one that's allowed to think it. I'm not going to tell other people what to think and what to feel and what to believe. And that's where religions get corrupted by even the goodest of men, is they think that they ought to corrupt, or not corrupt, but to free another person of their own sin and their own liberties to be who they are and express themselves, to convert into this monarchical hierarchy where God is the king sitting on the throne, and you must kneel and you must bow and you must scrape and you must turn guilt into a virtue. That's corruption. That's not what a God is about. That's what a religion is about. And all religions corrupt any notion of what God is in any culture. It's just a matter of time. It's what humans do. So Tim says, nobody is totally right. I think almost all has some right of it. Look, we all have some things that are right and something, but what is right and what is wrong? See, then we're going to break it down even further than that. And it goes back to the same thing. Well, what is right, Tim? But your idea of what you think is right, and that's what you've been taught. That's what you have had expressed around you through various opinions of other people that you grew up with, that's imprinted upon you as you've imprinted upon them. You see, what you think is right and what I think is right, two different things. We might cross on a lot of different things, but we're not going to be right on every single thing. And that's why I tell people there can never be world peace. We don't all have the same idea of what peace is. And the way that we think to begin with, we feel somebody ought to keep that peace, because if someone doesn't keep that peace, well, then war will break out. Well, who's going to keep that peace and who's going to agree on who keeps that peace? That'll boil down to who has the biggest army, not who has the greatest voice of truth. So, but it applies to anything, Tim. Take away religion, right? So this is what I've been able to just digress or dissect into. Take away religions, put anything else. It doesn't matter what word you choose, it was created by mankind. You see, a tree is only a tree because we all agree that the first person that came up with the concept of it, we couldn't think of anything better. And so we all have this mutual agreement across all of humanity in a lexicon of language that these words that are taught to us, we accept them as though they are real, right? There is no such thing as East and West, right? There's no such thing as North and South. There are no constellations in the sky. There is not a real line that goes around the earth called the equator. There's no such thing as coordinates. We made it up. It's a man-made invention. So the sun doesn't rise in the east and sets in the west. The sun is just doing its shit. There is no east and west, but we've created these things. They're called social institutions, right? And social institutions are fueled by words. They're fueled by definitions to words. And so all of these things that we have manifested and created through a lexicon can be broken down to the same thing. It all comes from man, and therefore it is fallible. The whole thing. All of human knowledge is fallible. It is limited to what humans can experience only. And we have already proven through scientific instruments the infinitesimal amount of other different dimensions that exist at the same time. We can only perceive so much of that. So, all right. So I'm going to call it a night. And I'm going to do an outro for you guys. But I'm gonna actually sing a song if you guys are cool with that, and then I'll go ahead and kill it. Because I was gonna play a song, but I've been getting hit with a lot of copyright strikes, so I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna play my own shit. So I'm gonna play a song for you guys. Um, I could do an REM song. Oh, it's bigger. Dude, a lot of people don't like REM, but I always liked REM. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and sing an outro song for you guys, and I hope it's not like. Let me go ahead and back this up just a little bit. All right. Well, I know what I'll play. I'll play Immortalize. Walking down this path next to the black sands, with the perk on my back and the guitar in my hand. Into this fire pit, couldn't seem to help it. I was drawn to those emerald eyes. I was drawn to those emerald eyes. Two endless days in the valley, where the vibration never swerve one bit. And into this night, fire leaves just right, dancing flames in those emerald eyes, dancing flames in those emerald eyes. Oh, this must be what it feels like when worlds collide. Under this blinking dying, shining light, cascades highway through the starry night. Hey! Going to this beach, you and me, ascertain the possibility of living free. On this last day before you left, against these odds, the universe gave us 1%. It gave us this 1%. Oh, this must be what it feels like when worlds collide. Under this dying, blinking, shining light,
this highway, oh, through the starry night.
Hey.
I was drawn into those emerald eyes, oh, drawn in like a moth on a steady night, dancing flames in those emerald eyes, dancing flames in those emerald eyes. Those emerald eyes, I was drawn into those emerald eyes, drawn in like a moth lost in the night, dancing flames in those emerald eyes, dancing flames in those eyes. See your body, mind, and soul in those eyes, those emerald eyes. Oh, this must be what it feels like when the world's blue light. Under this fading, blinking, shrinking, dazzling, shining light, cascade this highway, oh, through this starry night. They say nobody likes a bogan.
All right, guys. Aloha. Thank you for hanging out with me. So, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and just end this here. Guys, aloha, mahana pano. Have a great night. And we will see you probably tomorrow night.